Hello, hello. Is that mic finally working? Testing one, two, three. Testing one, two, three. Perfect. Thank you for the confirmation there. The old damn challenge. Okay. So, first off, welcome one and all to the weekly edition of Mapmaker Monday. My name is Mac. I am the community manager for Dungeon Alchemist. Every Monday, I host a stream, a live build, so to speak, where you can watch and learn. You can ask questions. The stream is AMA format, so if you have any questions related to Dungeon Alchemist, maybe how to export something a certain way, or how to accomplish a certain task in the builder, just let me know, and I will do my best to assist you. I am live streaming right now on several different platforms. We're live on Twitch, let's see, YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, and Steam at the moment. So I'm monitoring multiple chats in different places. And so if for some reason I don't answer you right away, if you ask something, please bear with me. I usually scan the chats about once every minute or so. And as there's so many of them, it takes a minute. So thank you so much, everyone, for being here. I hope you enjoy the stream. And just to give you a little kind of brief rundown of what we're working on. For the past few weeks, we've been building this, what I call an ancient cemetery. It will essentially be a massive cemetery complex with this huge chapel here. Last week, we were working on finishing touches of the chapel. We were building this path around it, and also putting like shrubs and bushes and trees and stuff, statues, kind of making it feel lived in, used to a degree. Anyway, Wolf Harrington over on TikTok, thank you for that follow. Much appreciated. Much appreciated. Oh, that's awesome. David Larson on YouTube says, I mentioned to some local DMs about the multi-level maps being offered soon. Every single one of them went nuts with excitement. I mean, Greyfax, I'm running it pretty decent at the moment. But yeah, I do have a bit of a tank when it comes to my particular graphics card. I am running on medium, and I'm not necessarily like ultra res graphics, you know, it's not necessarily 1080, it's a bit above, just whatever, 4K stuff. But it definitely helps to have a better graphics card with a bigger map. That being said, the size of a map you can make in Dungeon Alchemist is essentially directly proportionate to the power of your computer. So the more powerful your machine is, the more like massive maps and more detailed, intricate with effects and lighting and assets that you can do. Hey, Top Down Tabletop, how we doing? I have been working on this one about an hour or two a week for the past like month or so, every Monday. We kind of started with this entryway here. And then, after the entryway, we came over to kind of this like parking area and the chapel. We built the chapel out. And then we did this graveyard, which actually didn't take as long as you might expect. I used a new tool we released in our last update titled Magic. If you're not familiar, there's the object brush, which has been around forever, but it got some upgrades. One of them is these brush types here. So before it was just a scattered brush type. Now you have like a grid, a circle, line, and then you have even more options for advanced settings for the brushes. So what I did is I selected a grave, kind of, just a graveyard stuff, and I set the brush to be rather large, the density to be rather light. I had to play with it for a minute, but then I kind of did that, and then boom, already had pretty much a set up graveyard. Helps tremendously. Can I ask you, Greyfax, what kind of export settings do you use for, and what are you playing on, like a virtual tabletop? Hey, Kaiser, how you doing? David Larson. Biggest map I made was about 180 by 400 as a full operational farm. An i9 12,900K and an RX 7800 could handle it. That's insane, my friend. I've never pushed the limits of my system. I'm running a 4070 Ti, and then I have like 128 gigabytes of RAM. I have honestly loaded up some of the largest maps on the Steam Workshop, though, without any problem. This chapel, one thing I'm most proud of is this multi-level little bell tower. I built that by hand, because multi-level at this time is all done by hand. Anything above the first floor, you essentially would have to disable collisions and then raise it up to that level and then just start snapping it in place. Yeah, so Roll20, first off, I love Roll20. I think it's a great, simple, intuitive site. One downside, and I think they're aware of this, is they're kind of limited in their upload settings. They kind of limit you to a certain, like, restricted amount file size, right? For your file limits. And recently, we even asked them if they were considering increasing those limits to be more in line with their competition. But the thing is those limits make it really hard to get a map that's within that size that's like a reasonable quality. One thing I always recommend when exporting for VTT, though, that will save you a tremendous amount of headache and your players a tremendous amount of frustration. Always export at low quality DPI first. You can try high or very high, but very high and high are usually meant for print quality. They're not meant for virtual tabletops. Most VTTs recommend 60 to 90 DPI for their maps, kind of in that ballpark, and 72 is right in the gray, the Goldilocks zone there. It keeps your files small. That's the big thing. So yeah, it may look a little bit fuzzier, but I'll be honest with you, your players will never notice. They're more interested in kicking butt and taking names, looking for loot, than they are critiquing the pixel detail of a map. And I say that with extreme confidence because I play it on many tables with Dungeon Alchemist maps. I've spoken to many DMs who use our tools, and I've never heard of one player being like, these maps look like dookie, So export at 72 DPI. If you're doing video exports like animated maps, I know that Roll20 can support animated with like a plugin or a module or something. So if you're doing animated, also do a still as a backup. Set up a separate scene of the still. That way, if one of your players can't load the animated maps, try the still. It's almost always better to load with low DPI though. So look at this. If you jump from 72 to 150, it's over double the amounts of dots per inch in a square inch. Okay. So that means essentially double the file size. Going to 300, you're like 5-6 times the file size. And that's where you're running into maybe a map may not load in correctly, or your players may not be able to load it correctly. This goes for any VTT, not just Roll20. Always try the lowest DPI. I know some people can get away with 150, but you're more often than not going to have trouble with the map not loading into your VTT or your players not able to load it. That's all. Quick question. Is it possible to make like panoramic recording using the token view? So can you explain of what type of panoramic you're hoping for? Like a perfect circle or something? Like you spin or something? Oh, I am, Shanks. How you doing, buddy? Welcome back, by the way. So I've been working on this map for a while, but it's a massive kind of cemetery. And basically, what we're working on right now is kind of putting a garden and walking path around the cathedral, chapel, whatever you might call it. I am wonderful. Thank you for asking. I appreciate it. So this chapel here, last week we were putting in this this paver path and the fencing area around it, and kind of putting like the little stones and just little decor to kind of flesh it out and make it feel more like it's been here a while and it's attended to, and you know what I mean? That's kind of the general feel at the moment. That, and you know, this cemetery is going to be huge when all's said and done, so these are kind of just like middle of the line graves. Here we have like a really fancy plot for a family, or maybe like a royal family, or you know, maybe like for knights or something. It could be just something important. And then here we have, you know, tons of space to expand. I'm going to put a road going this way, and I think I'm going to put the caretaker's place over here with like a little garden, a shed with tools, and like a little home. Eros Valar over on TikTok says, "Hey bud, is there a way to create a multi-level home so they're not always flat? Can you explain what you mean by not always flat there? Can you expand upon that a little bit so I understand fully?" So up in the top right here, Kaiser, you have a little button called cinematic mode, and it is actually like a drone, and you can do like pans like this. So depending on like what you mean by panoramic, I mean, some panoramics, true panoramic cameras, like the old ones, will spin they'll be in a fixed position, and they'll kind of follow along a track going from left to right, right? Doing a wide like shot, correct? So alternatively, you could do a pan by just holding right, and it'll just slowly go to the right. So it'll stay on a track to a degree. The camera tools are somewhat limited, but there are two different ones, and they both have distinct purposes and uses. So the cinematic camera probably could work a lot better in your case. Unfortunately, there's no way to set it in a spin, like a circle, really easily. You might be able to set up like a mouse macro or something for your computer using like an external third-party software that would spin it in a perfect circle, because it's the mouse I'm doing right now. So that would be something you'd have to come up with. Yeah, maybe, Rev. How you doing, by the way? So Aros, do you mean like a round tower? Heather Bushway on TikTok asks, why don't I have some of these items? So the items that you're seeing that you may not recognize, I located those on the Steam workshop. So none of the items here are like development or in development. This is all stuff you have access to, either stock or through the Steam workshop tab. So if you go up here where it says Steam workshop, Heather, and you click browse assets, there's over 6,100 3D models available to increase your collection. And, you know, expand upon what's already stock. And with these, you can even breach into, like, different settings. So, like, here's a tank, here's a dumpster, you could probably do modern. I've seen people do modern, apocalypse, zombie apocalypse, sci-fi, cyberpunk, all sorts of different settings, okay? Because they have access to now different themes and aesthetics through the Steam Workshop. These assets many of them are created by members of our community and shared. They just love making and sharing assets. Others are sourced from third-party websites and then shared. So for instance, you'll see some let's see here. Like this one was created by a very talented artist in our community named Sack. This one here, I'm trying to find one that was this one was made with Mesh AI, which is an AI 3D modeling tool. This one here was found on the Sketchfab website and shared under a Creative Commons license. So it's essentially crediting the creator and linking it to the original place it was found from before it was shared. So a bunch of 3D models are on here, including tokens. So there's like close to 500 tokens available. And you can even import your own 3D models. So let's say you know how to sculpt, or you got a little bit of knowledge with CAD. You can use the Steam Workshop tab here, and it says Open Asset Importer. Let me save really quick, just in case. I don't think I've done much building today. We'll get into building soon. I've been answering a lot of questions, so These streams are all AMA format, so I do get a little distracted sometimes answering questions more than I do building. So I apologize. I do want to put cameras on rails or add like a track or like a thing that it would follow, so you could program like a path and then it would follow that path and record, because that would make it really cool for cinematic shots. I also want improved tooling and options for the cameras, i.e. the ability to hide the UI while in that menu, so you can use external recording tools like OBS or, you know, Streamlabs or whatever. I also would love to have the ability to increase the frame rate, you know, instead of 30 FPS, go to 60 or higher. The bit rate, so you can increase the quality, and resolution, so you can pick the resolution on command instead of it being tied to your screen resolution. I do want more options there, and I've asked the devs for that, and they said they'll consider it. No promises, though. So this here is the asset importer, and with this, you can actually import 3D models into Dungeon Alchemist. So, like, this roof right here is a roof model my wife sculpted for me. I kind of guided her on what I wanted, and then she built it for me. And then I imported it into Dungeon Alchemist. And then our last build, I actually used that as the roof for the build, and it has an observatory kind of spot for a telescope that sticks out. So, Valar, you were asking about multi-level. I'm going to just poke at a couple options really quick and see if I understand what you were saying. Do you mean like a round tower that's multi-level? Run amok, what up, dude? I owe you one tutorial. So this tower, multi-level, and any multi-level for that matter, you really just need to know one trick. Disabling collisions. Once you disable collisions, your whole world is unlocked with Dungeon Alchemist, and let me explain why. Many objects in Dungeon Alchemist... Let's place this wall, maybe. Oops, wrong tool. I'm not in the freestanding walls. I'm going to grab one of these, okay? When collisions are on, you can't put this into another object. It says no, right? You see the red UI? It's telling me that's not an option, okay? So, a room with a few stairs. So essentially, like, the stair is a centerpiece before it goes to another room. I mean, multi-level will be super easy in our next update. It'll be like riding a bike or like clapping your hands. It'll be pretty easy for the most part. And I'll show some video of that in a minute if people want to see it. But I'm showing you how to do it with what you have now. So if you disable collisions, this arrow appears. And you can also start merging objects together. So a few behaviors happen. You can now merge objects together. The colliders no longer interfere with each other. Colliders are like invisible walls on all of these objects that tell DA how big they are and where they sit and how they like fit together. Now these colliders no longer interfere with each other, right? Secondary behavior is you can raise and lower objects, right? Like this wall is now up. I could put it as a second floor if I get it rotated right and set up right. Does that make sense? And then from there, you could really actually just hold control and tell it to snap, because it'll snap on the lines that exist. Duplicate it by clicking it once, right? And then hold shift each time. This will just be the extra floor here just to kind of show. I'm not going to keep this by any means. But that's kind of just a quick second wall, right? You can do that with pretty much any like round construction options, these floors, these walls, stuff like that. Now, I have a map that I made that has multi-level. I'll just load it up. I'm seeing a lot of questions coming in. Asmodeus, can you kind of field questions on YouTube for a moment while I'm answering the previous ones, and then we'll get into them? Yeah, the community's gone ham. They almost have as many community assets as we have stock assets. I think we're just about to surpass uh, stock assets with community assets, which is great because, I mean, we have hundreds of people contributing assets on the Steam Workshop, whereas we only have a team of 10 people, 5 artists making assets on the team. So even if we, had them working all day, every day, we couldn't keep up. Hey, Smokey, what up? Welcome back. So if a model is imported as an STL file through the importer, then yes, you can adjust the colors. Let me show you an example really quick of that. So over on YouTube, they're asking about this. I imported this 3D model, a shell, okay? There's a painted version. Here's an STL version. So this one's a GLB file. It's got like a texture on it, sandstone. This one here, the gray, here, let me make it daytime so it's easier to tell. This gray one, when it's imported as an STL, the default is gray. STL is like the default 3D printing file format. It's a very common 3D model format, but it lacks, any texture detail or anything like that. It's just a straight 3D model. We opted to give you some color filters. So there's 15 color options. You can apply a simple color option, or there's even metallic ones. So you can, if you import it as an STL, you get 15 bonus color options. People use this to their advantage. Like the other day, a creator in our community uploaded some slime packs. So you now instead, and he did it as STL, instead of just green or every color individually, now everyone has every color slime. It can be, whatever. It can be some sort of weird moss on the wall. It could be anything. Oh, nice, Smokey. Congrats. Now look at this right here, Aros, okay? This multi-level structure is a round structure, right? And what I've done here is essentially I've used an order of operations to carefully construct this. Each floor has, everything kind of carefully set on the floor for it. So this like wood flooring here, I got this wood piece off of the workshop. Swedish Cook shared that on the workshop as a pack with a bunch of different flooring and ladders and stairs. All of the stuff on that floor, except for external components like this here, is stacked on that floor. So I can move it as a singular piece. It's modular, okay? And not only that, but the floor snaps to a snap point when I hold control. So it's really easy to find and center it with the existing ones. So that's another thing I did. I made sure I centered them and used control to snap it. I mean, run amok. You could always make some. You could always make some. So each of these floors has everything stacked kind of delicately on it in a way that I can pull it apart and go through it, right? Oops. Now let me show you with the roof on, right? I've got this token here. I mean, Shanks, as long as you're not reselling maps or making maps for like a module that you're selling, or that you're putting on it's if it's for your stream and stuff, I'm pretty sure most people aren't going to have a problem. That being said, there are some assets on there that I definitely wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole because they are hard copyright stuff that it's only a matter of time before one entity will notice it and probably get it taken down. Steam is the person who can remove assets and stuff, and if they're reported to us, we can moderate them to a degree. But Steam has people, when they upload assets, they have to agree to all Steam's terms and conditions. So if you upload something that is definitely owned by somebody else, you're doing so at your own risk. I would not recommend doing so. There's a lot of artists in our community who share their assets and say anyone can use them, even for licensed projects for resale. They'll usually mention in the upload information data if they do, but otherwise, I mean, if it's just for personal use, private use, or if you're just streaming for fun, stuff like that, I don't think it'd be a problem. So up here on this top floor, these arcs, there's few objects in DA that actually create arcs between them. These are like Tesla type coils. If you search coil, there's several that'll do it, and there's also a battery coil type thing. And if there's two of them within a short distance of each other or more, they'll create an arc. This here also does it. I mean, it's a good idea to be safe if you plan to like build the maps for resale or as a campaign module or anything like that. Like if you have a Patreon or, you know, you're doing commission work, definitely don't use third-party assets from the workshop. Be careful. But if you're, you know, if it's just for personal use or for fun, I don't think there's a problem with it. That's part of the reason it's around, is to help expand your options and give you more versatility. Lord Rev, it does take some practice, you know, and if you don't kind of set it up that way from the get-go, it does become a headache as you go down the road. One thing I'm sad about is ultimately, like, this map won't be compatible with our multi-floor update, so I'll probably have to gut it or redo it. There are some weird gaps, like at the bottom here, you can see through. There isn't a true door here, like I can't get out. It's more immersion than anything. There's some parts of it that just aren't perfect, so I just make do with what I got. At the end of the day, I'm the DM. I can tell them it's a perfect structure without any problems, and they just have to believe me. The key is trying to get objects roughly the same size and working with that. So I stacked like the walls on the edges of this, all the objects on the edges of this. Every floor is stacked. All the objects on that floor are stacked on that floor. That's pretty much the only way to move them as one piece, at least at this time. I'm hoping in our next update will allow you to group objects and copy and paste those groupings, or maybe save that grouping on the workshop for other people, stuff like that. You know, Cranky Smurf, you can actually make custom floor tiles if you use this object right here, abstracts. See these green kind of whatever planes? You can insert an image into here, and you could, you know, in theory, make a repeating tile and just make custom floor tiles with it. People have done that quite a few times, actually. Yes, grouping like a prefab. Internally, we call that a variant. So we're hoping to add the tools in our next update to allow you to create and share variants. So right now, anytime you put an object down in Dungeon Alchemist that is pre-decorated, that's a variant. If it has like a table with a bunch of objects on it, or a desk, or a shelf, or whatever, that's a variant. And if you press tab before you finalize its location, it will switch between the pre-configured variants for that object. And each of those variants is a possibility for AI generation in a room. So we have pre-configured layouts of the tables that it might use in an AI generation of a room, or when you place it, it randomly picks from one. And we're hoping to give you the ability to create that, create stuff like this. So essentially you could save a bunch of objects together like a ship, or decorate a picnic basket, or, you know what I mean? Little things like that. Maybe a whole house. Save it as a prefab. That would be nice. Essentially, that's not a promise that it'll be available. That's something that we're working on. No guarantee it'll be in the next update, though. I really would love it, though. Let's get back to the build. Eros, did I cover anything that might have helped you a little bit? Or do you still feeling lost? Yeah, Shanks, that's totally fine. I don't see a problem with it. Like, I you know, like, definitely probably stay away from the most definitely copyrighted assets. But if they're, like, you know, generic stuff from, like, a fantasy setting, I don't think anyone's going to get upset. One thing you want to do when you're placing fence like this by hand is you want to get in the above position. And essentially that'll allow you to better line it up and you copy it from the existing one so they're all in the same height, so it's just a matter of lining them up. You can, I'm sure you can make a map for your Pokemon campaign, just don't share it on the workshop or resell it. Especially when it comes to like Nintendo, they're incredibly litigious. Like, if you're making Pokemon models, let's just say in theory, someone in this game in this stream wanted to make 3D models of Pokemon and import them into Dungeon Alchemist. You don't have to share them on the workshop. You could keep them locally to a local collection that's just for you and your players, and then make your maps and then put them in your local game. I definitely, from a business standpoint, can't encourage you to use copyrighted materials in any way, but it's not like you're reselling it or, putting it somewhere for distribution. As long as you're not doing that, I don't really understand how they could get at you. You know what I mean? Or be mad at you. Hey, Belle, thank you. Appreciate it. How are you today? What you been up to? How is World in the Fantasy Grounds community? Oh my gosh, what happened? Ah! DA just lagged out and that just spun around a ton. Stop it. I'm trying to get this like more parallel to the church. One way I can do that is make another one. I'll turn my collisions on. I am wonderful, thank you for asking. Kind of thinking of having a path go out over here. Because we had a path exit here, right? Thinking another one here somewhere. Because there will be more plots on this side, like funeral plots all around here, but there'll mostly be like more generic plain graves. I'm going to start out with just a huge area of like kind of more, I guess you could call them pauper graves. And then as we get over here, they'll be more terraced and it's like lifted, and there'll be more fancy ones. So there'll be like a flat terrace that's kind of fenced off. Do you know Bella? Shanks? Because if not, first off, Bella meet Shanks, Shanks meet Bella. Streamer here on Twitch that uses FGU and Dungeon Alchemist. Bella is actually the community manager for FGU. Not really happy with how this is paving over here. It's starting to look like a nightmare. It's always good to kind of meet the right people when you are a content creator. And I always love aligning content creators with the proper resources for their community. And community managers usually know how to do that. Bella's awesome, though. I'm already starting to hate this path now. I was gonna say, Shanks, I've been seeing a lot of your TikToks pop up in my feed lately. Assuming you guys have been much more active lately. David Larson over on YouTube asks, is there any indication of how many monsters are going to be added as part of the main asset collection? That's a really good question. Honestly, as far as like tokens, monsters, we will be adding more every update going forward. We have 5 major updates remaining. This last update, I think they did 22 tokens through our partner Bite the Bullet Studios. All of these ones here were added in the last update, and all of them are magic themed. So there's a few monsters, a few, player characters, a couple of dragons. Going forward, each update we're hoping will have about probably 10 to 25 custom tokens provided from our partner, Bite the Bullet. The reason we partnered with them is because they're absolutely amazing token artists. They're proven reputation in the industry. And in having them make the tokens, it takes no time away from our artist team. It doesn't detract from our asset creation or development schedule at all. It's just a bonus. You know what I mean? So essentially, you get these as a nice little bonus. But I can't speculate as to how many for each update there will be. I mean, if we use this as a basis, about a third of the tokens were monster based. So I mean, just if we extrapolate from that, it could be a safe bet to kind of guess around there. I would say between 1/5 to 1/3% or 1/3 of all the tokens going forward will probably be monster related, because Wim likes to get a good cross section. That is good. That's good. I'm never certain who is doing what over there on in your team, but that is fantastic. Is Vic still here watching? I wasn't sure. But thank you for putting up all that content lately. I've been enjoying the little clips. I really enjoy those like campaign clips. I think they are like what really sells a community on a campaign, like a group, a setting, a troop, so to speak. Like I could care less about the campaign sometimes, as long as the story, the arcs, as long as it seems like the group is having fun and laughing a lot and enjoying each other's company. You know what I mean? So that's really kind of like what I like seeing the most. I guess group chemistry. Those Legends of Evantris clips, for instance, I don't know if anyone's familiar with them, but they are hilarious for that reason. They just constantly just have like a vibe off of each other. I really wish I could kind of taper this better. It looks so bad. I do not like this corner at all. And a junket. Gotcha. Fair enough. That's cool. That's really cool. So, okay, Smokey, what are you waiting for? Your desk you ordered on TikTok is expected to be there Thursday and it hasn't arrived yet. Are you based in the US? I'm just going to throw this out there. In the last week, there has been a dock workers strike and two major hurricanes. One's on the way and one currently happened, so I'd imagine it's slowing down all sorts of shipping, receiving across the US. Now, even if you're not in the US, it could still probably mess it up. But yeah, honestly, like, it doesn't seem very probable that they're going to make it at this point. Got something in my eye. Speaking of like the hurricane, my heart goes out to those affected. You know, I'm sure we don't have any in the in the crowd watching right now that were affected. They're probably more busy getting their lives back together. So I'm just like seriously sending vibes their way and wish there was something I could do. Um, you know, there may be people in our community who are affected, and it might be a good idea to do like a fundraiser or something like that. Wait, my stapler? David Larson on YouTube says Hurricane Milton is just looking for its stapler. That's my stapler. I brought it from home. It's a swing line. Man, I haven't seen Office Space in a while. Thank you for reminding me. I'm sure of it, and it's only going to get worse. It seems like, Bell. Like, I honestly, I feel so bad for that whole region, even inland, where it was just completely devastated by flooding. You know, it's crazy how, I mean, things like coastal erosion and like are just so bad in those regions. Um, I mean, shoot. You know, I'll talk to the devs about this, and maybe we can organize like a fundraiser of some sort to try and get some funds together for, you know, members in our community who might be affected by this. Bella, I don't know, like maybe who knows, like we could maybe team up here and do something for, you know, the members of both of our communities or just the tabletop gaming community in general. I don't know if anyone's doing something already, and I don't want to step on anyone's toes, but it might be a good idea. I'll look into some of the logistics on my end, and I know you probably got a lot going on your end, but I would be, you know, more than willing to volunteer my time to help any of those in need, like by trying to raise, you know, funds. Many FG employees are in Florida. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry to hear that. Oh my goodness, that is. I didn't know where they were based. I mean, sorry, I don't know where every company's based. It's really hard to know that. I just assumed she was there because she was you know, saying she was having to deal with it this time of year, and yeah, that stinks. I would not want to be dealing with hurricane season year in and year out. It's bad enough to have to just deal with snow and stuff like that. You're like, hey Mac, oh, I heard you like VTTs. Name all their corporate headquarters. No, Bane, it's cool. I know you playing. How you doing, by the way, brother? Oh my goodness. Earth. They are located on Earth. Got a wise guy over here. This is so scuffed. This pathway, it is so scuffed. I don't like it. I'm not happy with it, but we're gonna deal with it. I'm gonna just power through till it's done, and then when it's done, we're gonna finish doing all the plants, because the plants are gonna cover the paths. That's the plan at the moment. Lore says a guilty dwarf built a path. Stonemason, more like stoned mason, am I right? Okay, this is just... This is just awful. I wish I had more like bends I could do, or dynamically bend it around stuff. You know, like put little points and it would be like doot, 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 and then bend it. And like a spline tool or something. But no. It is starting to come along though, I'm not gonna lie. Thank you, Gore, I appreciate it. Up. This particular asset is actually one of ours. I just sunk it into the ground. That's a half wall. I went into objects, structural, and then if you go to freestanding walls, there's an assortment of them that are like kind of like banisters and half walls. I just grabbed one that had like this top piece that looked like pavers. That was the main thing I went for. I think it's this one right there. Yeah. So either one of these Gothic banisters would work. The other ones don't have like the little paver piece, so that worked perfectly to my designs there. Yeah, a lot of objects can be used in alternative ways. You know, we call it CRAM in our community. That's an acronym for Creative Asset Misuse. Essentially, many different assets can be used in different ways that aren't really intended, or they're like, you know, they're advertised intention, I guess you could say. And many in our community like pride themselves on finding new ways to break Dungeon Alchemist and creative ways to use things. So how's stuff been going on the top-down tabletop streams? Which days are you guys and gals streaming lately? What's your schedule like? I'd love to pop in sometime. I've got to probably just add it into my phone on my calendar so I don't miss it. So I'm thinking I'm going to continue these shrubs that I use, but first I want to decorate the walls with some ivy. And this particular ivy will snap to walls if you grab it from the plants section. There's some wall-mounted plants here. What I'm going to do is grab one that's kind of like going under the wall. Huh, that's weird. It's like interfering with something there. Interesting. What is it? Wonder if it's the window. Probably is. It's okay. I'm going to just get around it. Something like that. Going up to the window's edge. Right? And then we could put a little one right under the window. And again, I'm gonna just sink this down a little bit so it's not like blocking the window. Take a second one of these. Thicken it up. So it looks like they trim it around the window somewhat. Shanks, it's okay, you can watch me. Honestly, I love the collision toggle because objects that would normally be restricted to a wall, you can put elsewhere. So this is like, imagine things like, you know, candles. You can have some floating candles or chandeliers or wall-mounted lights just sitting in the air. It's kind of fun. Again, I would use that with the ivy here because I love making a building feel old and like established. Let's see if this one will work. Ah, it's trying to snap over all the branches. Darn it! Okay, we got to get creative here. We'll use this one. We'll disable collisions. Oh my, why are you jumping? Chill out, guy. I think there's like a little ridge there, and it's just getting kind of a little boop. So the vines are actually a nature object that you place on walls. You could place them wherever, too. They have floor vines, so you could put them, like, you know, in the garden below. So it kind of just seems like it's creeping out. But you got to be careful because it can cut through like that. So just make sure you rotate it right and get it in the right location. Oh, man. No! No! There we go. We also have moss. So these, there's, yeah, you got some fungi, like wall mountable fungi or mushrooms, some Baronsworth, some ivy, some moss, some roots. Heck, I could even do some roots over here, like behind the tree. But these are kind of big, I'm not gonna lie, and maybe just a little bit smaller. But see, that just seems out of place. If they're tending this garden, those roots wouldn't be there. The ivy, though, I like. I feel like that's more natural. And you could even put some, like, on this gate, you know, kind of feel like it's here, and it makes it more thick and kind of used. It's a really thin, just wrought iron gate, so now it just is... I don't know. Hey, it's been growing up this a while. Yeah! Yeah, run amok. Actually, you know what? I owe you a tutorial really quick, so I'm gonna do that, and then I'm gonna save. We'll show you both of those things. Okay? So, yes, ivy will grow on anything. So, in the object brush here, let's say, for instance, like earlier I showed painting crosses or graves. In a graveyard, typically, right, you would want it to be like kind of a nice grid, kind of it follows a pattern, right? Oh, thank you so much, Atlam, for sharing that. Atlam's such a good mod. I appreciate you, bud. So, first off, going through the brush settings, you have brush types, right? Scatter, pattern, circle, line. Pretty straightforward what they do. Brush size, that increases this circle or decreases the circle. So if you need a more precise brush, go small. If you're just trying to cover an area as quick as possible, go big. Brush density, that means the size of the object it's placing and how many objects in that circle it'll place. So both the scale of the object size and the actual... yeah. Anyway. Oh, actually, no, I got that backwards. The bigger the brush is, the bigger the objects will be within inside of it. The brush density, it means more objects in the brush. Going over here, now you can change a few different things. Random rotation. What that means is when you're placing objects, sometimes you may want them to rotate and all be different from each other. Sometimes you don't. Maybe you want a pile of skulls. It makes more sense for the bones and skulls to be rotated different from each other, not all oriented the same, right? But if it's, say, a pile of crosses going across this area, you want them similar orientation, correct? Too much density there. So I'm going to thin out the density. Try it a little bit. Got to kind of experiment here. Get it just right. So essentially they kind of span across the same plane this way, and they're not rotating, so they were essentially all buried around the same time, right? Position randomness, it'll scatter it throughout that instead of being mostly precise. Okay, so it'll increase scattering in that area. Scaling randomness means it'll adjust the scaling at random instead of roughly a similar scaling. Kind of how the image indicates. And then scale average. Let's say you want the objects to all be much larger or much smaller. This will increase or decrease the object scale average. So all of these you have... here, let's go through the various brush options here, too. So one of my favorite is the circle brush, right? We don't really want position randomness, rotating randomness, scaling randomness, scale average roughly the same. to make this a little bit more dense. And just like that, I got myself a fairy ring. Took me, 3, 4 clicks. 5 clicks. 10 clicks. I don't know. A lot. Let's try a different assortment of mushrooms. The circle tool can be used in a lot of different ways, too. Maybe you need, like, a quick, goblin fort or something like that. Oh, I guess you can't put that one in a circle? There. So now I just made like a quick circle for it. It took me a few clicks. Alternatively, I could use the line brush with this same thing and make like, a quick little impromptu bandit or goblin fort. It's only been out. The circle tool's only been available for, since the last update, so it's easy to miss. Every time a new update, though, comes out, I recommend reading the notes. The patch notes are invaluable, and they still miss stuff. Like, this patch notes is quite extensive, and I make a bunch of videos leading up to the launch, too, that showcase a bunch of the core improvements. Definitely check out the patch notes, though. They go through, like, new objects, new features, updates, stuff like that. You have 2 campaigns, you're waiting for them to start, Smokey? I'm sorry. Okay, let's get back to the build. Back to the build. Oh, wait, nope. I owe someone a quick demo. Okay, so force perspective. I'm going to just save this. It's important when you're doing something force perspective. Hey, can you remind me of your question, Run Amok? You want to know how to do a force perspective map, right? Floating castle over a village. Okay, so I will tell you this right now. You're going to have to make that castle almost entirely from hand. You won't be able to rely on the AI to lay down floors or generate walls or anything like that. Especially if you want it up with the illusion of it flying. To make something fly is actually quite easy. I mean, I'm assuming this is like a giant's castle, right? Hey, see you later, Bella. Hit me up if you're interested in that. I would be very interested in trying to organize because I know you're dealing with stuff, but if anyone you know needs help in your community or if I hear from my community, I know I'm going to want to try and help. So just let me know if there's anything I can do. Even if it's just doing a 24-hour stream to raise funds and just being silly the whole time so, people get a laugh and can help out those, hurt the most by this. Thank you. Just hit me up if you need anything, okay? So this map is a great example of a forced perspective map, okay? And I'm going to add a castle in the sky just to add to its allure. But it's essentially a bunch of floating islands in the sky. And they used a few tricks in tandem to make this work. So here they have a couple of big islands that are they use the terrain tool to raise this up. And it's nice kind of trimmed flat around the edge instead of slanted. And they put an AI structure on the top. So if you wanted to kind of have it like it's floating land underneath the castle, you could use this method, okay? And you could build with AI. So if you're open to that, the castle is suspended in the air, and down below is the village, kind of like this, like a tiny little village that is forced perspective tiny, that could work. So what you would do essentially is build a map where you have a raised area, right? Big piece of raised land. So start with a flat map, raise up a section, build your castle on that. The area down below, you would need to use an abstract to make this cloud kind of flooring, okay? So that is done by placing an abstract object, which we have quite a few that can work in this instance, but I would use the large customizable pane, disable collisions. I'm just going to set it on top of this. And what this person did is they scaled this beyond the map, right? Until it was the entire floor. And then they inserted a cloud image, right? That's the clouds. That's the ground. But down here, you could have part of that cloud image just look like an island or a land that's down below. So you could just customize this cloud image to not be all cloud, to work to what you need, to have a village down below, right? Or no clouds at all, right? So the clouds just add to the allure of what you're trying to accomplish. Now, essentially, the top area would be your main size, full size castle. The village down below, you would have to do this forced perspective. Each of these objects, they're tiny. This is a very small medieval house. And what they did is they located this object on the asset browser. If you go to Browse Collections, the collections can be made by anyone, by the way. Anyone with access to the Steam Workshop and a copy of Dungeon Alchemist can browse the assets and create collections. So maybe you're like, man, I wish there was a collection of all these homes. You could do that. So someone's actually created collections of a few different homes when they were uploading them. Thank goodness. That would be Asmodeus or Dallas RT, one of our beloved moderators. It looks like the workshop is struggling at the minute. That being said, I do have these assets in my collection. Essentially, if it's up here, look how tiny it is in comparison. This would be its normal size, right? Somewhere around here. So what they've done is they've disabled collisions, which allows you to scale the object way down beyond its normal size, lower it and raise it, and now down here is this tiny little platform with these homes on it, which we assume are full-sized just because the scale of the distance. Looking at it from this perspective, it does feel like these are much further away and actual full-size places. Does that make any sense in how this works? So let's start from scratch. We're going to do a forest map. Reason being is we need ground. I'm going to set this to flat. I'm going to leave it with no vegetation so I don't have to mess with it. No water, no weather, water level, okay? I'm just generating a 40 by 40 to keep things simple. This is essentially the basis of the map. Grab your terrain tool, make it a large brush size, make it a large brush strength, and then raise up the area for your castle. We'll just put it in the same location as the other one for simplicity. And assuming this is, the castle, it's probably going to be pretty big, right? I just pressed Alt-G to turn on my grid so I could reference it in a pinch without having to go into the settings. Okay, so I'm going to make this the castle's kind of land area, right? I'm going to turn that grid off. We could paint up here with the terrain paint. So we can make it like a nice green area where they've planted, and have nice fertile land. You don't want to get too close to the edges, though, because you want that to mostly stay as rock at the edge. Probably going to have like a wall or, you know what I mean? Something along those lines. Okay, so this is where your castle will be. I'm just going to generate a structure. It's not going to be amazing. Just a quick little whip together castle, okay? Oops, I didn't raise it up. And then this door isn't where I want it here, but I'm going to delete this door and I'm going to put a big double door. Gate. Something like this. Okay. There. And then now that I've got this reoriented around the door, if you shift the door's location, you can go back into the AI selection tool, regenerate the room. Need those. Oops, I just the whole thing. objects right here. So this could be the start of the castle. Then hallway around the edges of the castle. That put throne room here. And let's just put a bedroom. This is just a quick example. This is not obviously what you have. Just remember, at the end of the day, this is a really scuffed, quick way to do what you're after. I'm gonna probably just go bedroom. Okay, so now we have the castle, right? Regenerate both of these rooms. I like to move the door because the AI never knows what you're thinking, how you want it oriented, and now this changes it, right? So now we've got our quick castle, right? Nothing too crazy. In fact, it probably could use a kitchen and some other things. Add a kitchen. And do servants' quarters here. Actually, we'll make this a cellar. Servants' quarters there. Come on. Give me bunk beds. Spending way too much time on these beds, but you get the idea. So now we've got the castle up here. If you use the abstract plane like we showed earlier, my friend, this would create your kind of sky area, and you could put whatever image you want in here. You can make a custom image. You could prompt an AI to make one. The key is getting the right height. So it feels like the island's kind of cutting into the sky. Once you fill this in with a cloud image, it's pretty much good to go. Just a matter of creating secondary islands or the village down below, which you would make a much tinier island in this case, which would be just something like this. Oops. I guess you do that last. My bad. Same height. I messed that up. Let's see here. Maybe a little bit lower than that. Oh, just have the abstract between the two. This needs to be at least high enough to cover kind of the ground underneath. And remember, we can always paint this too to make it seem whatever. But this would be your village. So just house those like prefab ones here. Let's just put a couple of these. Scale them down to micro machine size, right? Oops, I accidentally clicked that thing there. The more of these houses you have, the easier it is to diversify your little village and make it look unique. But you could fill it up with this stuff. Heck, you could even use like stones for roads and things like that. So you can go to like the nature panel here. And then they have like rocks. This cave rock, right? Thin that out to be really thin. You could get really intricate. You're just building a tiny village, you know, like a little model village. It's too high because of the top of that. So does that make sense, Run Amok? Right now, it looks weird. It looks awkward. We zoom out a little bit. From here, it looks like a massive castle that is dwarfing this village that's really far away. Quick example here. Weird. Just resending it back. Don't know why it's doing this. Huh. That image is buggy. It's not working for some reason. I would probably create a question thread, Stratus. Sometimes images just bug out. I don't know what it is. I tried changing the title. It didn't change anything, man. One moment. Stand by. I just downloaded one myself. It's a stock image, so this is just, you know, just an example, right? So this here is kind of a way that we could assume that there is something much further away and smaller. Then the last thing, I would probably just put like an airship or something in between. How do they get up there even, you know, or maybe even one docked up here, right? You didn't do anything wrong, Atlam. I got it worked. Sometimes DA just doesn't like certain assets. You could extend this island out, put a little dock here for them where they have their airship, and then even put like a tiny little version of this same airship down here. It's like the village has one, but it's way far away or something like that. I don't know. You get the idea though, right? Force perspective is all about scale and distance. You will play with it a little bit to get it just right, unfortunately, because it's not really a stock feature. It's just using the tools available to get a solution. Okay, let's go back to my map. I hope that helped run amok. Do you have any more questions before we wrap up and go back to my map? Atlam, you did nothing wrong. I've run into this with dozens of images, my friend. There's a question forum and there's a support forum. You're asking questions about how to perform a task. Support is more geared around fixing a problem. Your DA isn't running correctly. Question forum is meant for asking questions about how to accomplish something. And especially when it comes to 3D models and how to fine-tune them, I would definitely reach out, and our community members would love to assist. We have several artists in our community that absolutely love assisting. By the way, the lightning arc that I showed earlier, if you want to just kind of add some into any map, here. Coil. So we've got this coil here is one of them. Those automatically do it. I think if you type electricity, electricity, there's a few different things. Conductors, connectors, the resurrection table. Man, a few different things can connect to it. Just to be clear, the smaller the circle and more dense the painter, the smaller... Yes, okay. So just to clarify on the object brush, as we discussed earlier, the smaller this is, the smaller object it'll create. The larger it is, the larger an object it'll create. But there is a limitation. It will only go between its stock settings of its minimum size and its maximum size. So if you want it any bigger than that or smaller than that, you will have to place them one at a time by hand. I have a quick question. Let's say I put a table down and then play multiple glasses on it. Is there a way to select all and duplicate it? Unfortunately, not at this time. Asif Essek over on TikTok asked that, and I'm afraid that is not something we offer for now. It's something we plan to offer in the future, being able to group objects and save the grouping and move it to another spot or another map. We talked about this a little bit earlier. It's called variant creation. Ultimately, the simplest would just be copying and pasting groups of objects or saving that grouping for future use as a prefab, if you will. I mean, there are faster ways to duplicate stuff. So, for instance, instead of placing the glasses down one at a time, like a wine glass, if you hold shift when you're placing it before you finalize the location, it duplicates it instantly. That's one way to speed up, rapidly placing objects. So you just essentially lay out all the tables, which you can do pretty quickly, especially with shift and control. Control will snap it to a place, and shift will duplicate it as soon as you place it. So let's say, with a table, let's just do a blank table. But you get the idea. Now, another thing you can do is use the object brush. The object brush, there's many objects that are configured into it, and you can take said object and paint a lot of different objects in mass. So this here will paint like a bunch of cooking utensils. Here you can do rock formations, stuff like that. But yes, the bigger the brush size, the bigger the object it will paint. If I make this smaller, it'll kind of go down to the minimum size of that object in its scattering. Brush density simply just packs more objects in that same space. What I would recommend if you want to increase the object size overall, click scaling average up all the way, right? Don't do random. Then they'll mostly all be larger. Because then it's a higher average and there's no random little ones peppered in. Hey Stormy, how are you doing? I'm good, thank you for asking. There's also the Erase All Objects tool, which can quickly erase all the objects in an area. But given that I kind of, have that big cloud thing under there, probably not good. Yeah. Anyway, let's open up my map and get back to work. Asif, I hope I answered your question there. And if you have any other questions, feel free to ask. That's what these streams are for. They're AMA format. You can watch, learn, make suggestions, provide feedback, and ask questions. Okay, so back to the build. Let's start decorating some more around this side because I want to put in some more plants here. I'm going to disable collisions to make my life easier. Put in some kind of ivy in here. Make sure it's not cutting through the building too much. And let's start using these plants. I like these in the corner positions because they're smaller. I have the larger plant here. Oh yeah, the multi-level update's going to be insane. Would any of you be interested in seeing some cool pictures and footage from the next update? I have a few on my computer I can share with you. Some of you may have seen them before, but it's still nice to see what there is and what we're working on. How you doing, Realm Walker? Welcome back. Excuse me. Sorry about that. Let me drink some water here while I'm pulling up the images. Okay. So, one thing that's coming in the next update that I'm incredibly excited for. We were showing the object brush just a moment ago, right? This is a tool that will allow you to turn any object into a brush, including objects from the workshop. So, meaning you could rapidly paint any old object you choose. This is actually something people in our community have wanted for a while. They want an object of a brush for every object, but in all honesty, creating a brush for every single object we have isn't viable. There's over 6,000 objects. This way you can create a brush, and we'll just have some of the more key kind of assortment of objects. This is an incredibly powerful tool. And would probably help you out quite a bit, Asif. Any of you watching? Hey, see you later, Top Down Tabletop. Thank you for being here. Any of you watching, if you have any questions about this, let me know, and I'll try to answer them. Keep in mind, it is an alpha feature. It's an alpha footage, so it's still under development. It could very easily not be finalized and make it into the update. This is just something they were sharing behind the scenes. So, this is another tool they're working on called the Modular Objects tool. Many objects in Dungeon Alchemist snap together when you're building, such as the tracks, rails, kind of like wall blocks and stuff like that. And this would, in essence, allow you to quickly build out, these objects in a much more rapid fashion because you just quickly click the connection you want to use. Now it kind of seems like Roller Coaster Tycoon, but this could be used in a lot of different assets in Dungeon Alchemist, not just the rail. One thing while we're sitting here, and you're seeing this, is I would like to point out on the side here, if you see my mouse on the right corner here, the top right corner is this 0 with an arrow, okay? This is very important, as it's a UI improvement that will allow you to jump between the levels in your map. So you can go to, floor, your ground floor all the way up to whatever floor. I pointed that out because the next demo shows this in action, but doesn't actually show it being clicked, which is frustrating because it shows shifting between the floors, just not the actual button being pressed, because it was recorded on a massive monitor in like 8K resolution, and Wim captured just a slice of the screen at 1080 for the demo. So let me show you. So he's actually going over and clicking on that arrow going up and down, or I'm assuming once you click on it, you can use your up and down arrows like an interface. And as you can see here, the UI is cut off, so it is definitely a slice of video. But this is a great example of the tower kind of building up and the way it'll kind of offer expansions and connections between it. And it's definitely alpha footage. It's buggy. Some of it isn't finalized or working, like that gargoyle was floating. This little, what would you call that? That fire bowl. I don't even know what to call this thing. Was also kind of floating. This door is connected between two floors. They're working on making sure all the assets are compatible between the various adjustments of floors, and it's a lot of work. And part of the way we're addressing this is when you increase a room up to the next floor, it puts a spacer in this level that's like a 2.5 foot kind of bump between each room, and it increases the room up and then puts a floor there, or a ceiling, if you will, adjoining the two spaces. I'll let that keep playing so you can kind of watch that. So this is alpha footage of our next update titled Fun with Objects, which we don't have a launch window or a date yet. Unfortunately, I can't even speculate as to when. I'm assuming sometime after the new year. Just too early to tell at this point. Honestly, that's more generative AI than it is procedural. Procedural is tied to very specific assets and themes, whereas generative, you tell it, a list of things to pick from. That would really only work if every single object in our library had every possible adjoining keyword, or, tied to it as metadata. So when you search, it could come up with all possible ones. And if someone has a typo or didn't put a space or anything like that, it wouldn't work, because we're working with last gen AI, not like Midjourney or ChatGPT, where you can type in stuff and it'll fill in the blanks and assume typos and fix your mistakes and then answer it. So I don't think we'll ever offer like a keyword search for generation, just mainly because it's not how our AI generation functions. Stormy. Man, that would be a big delay. I don't think it would be that long of a delay. Holy cow. That would mean it would be a year after our last update. So, Run Amok, yeah, I think a lot of people like the keyword generation because that's how almost all next-gen AI operates, right? You tell it what you're looking for, and then it generates it off of the keywords that you gave it, or a theme, or a set of words, or an explanation, right? So Dungeon Alchemist is more hands-on. The generation is based off of themes and or sub-generation of you want it to have windows, you want it to have floors. So you have, check boxes and things that you could do to refine the AI and give it more at least a little more of a touch from you. You could say, hey, I want this room to generate without walls or objects or lights, or hey, I want this environment to generate with hills or without hills, or with foliage, without foliage, with a river. You have some control, but it's kind of limited because it is last gen AI. Dungeon Master, how you doing, by the way? Welcome back. Asks on TikTok, are there any thoughts on exporting into STL or other formats for 3D printing? I will say this question has been asked a bajillion times, and I've answered it a bajillion times. It's kind of been beat, like it's like beating the horse with a stick, and it's. I'll be honest with you, there really is no plans for exporting at 3D of any kind. Many people want us to offer 3D model exports. No. It's nothing you did wrong. I'm just more like, man, I have to answer this again. It is just because, and I'll explain it to you, and I hope this doesn't come across as crass or short or anything like that. Basically, there's three reasons people want 3D model export: 3D printing, export for 3D VTTs, which, to be honest with you, there's only a handful, and only one of them offers like 3D model import. The other two are all within their own ecosystem, so you have to build within their setup and you can't import anything. The third is to export for like game engines. So people want to take the maps and export it to Unity or to, whatever, and then start creating a game around the maps they've made in DA. And I understand the reason people want this, because it's so simple and straightforward to make those things in DA and then export it for those purposes. It would be so amazing. I do 3D printing. I have 3 3D printers right behind me. So I understand the logic of wanting to 3D print your maps for tabletop play or local play. But on the back end, I think you're really not thinking of the logistics of removing all the supports from, the thousands of different objects and placements and things that would be present. That's just 3D printing. But none of our objects were actually created with that in mind. They're very simple objects that are simple flat shapes, simple cylinders, simple boxes that are essentially smoke and mirrors wrapped in a very intricate, like a wallpaper, so to speak. So this isn't like actually all detailed grit and, all the little lines in between the bricks. It's actually just texture mapping. So those texture maps aren't real detail that would print at all. So it would just be a flat wall if it did export as a 3D model with just very simple shapes. There would be no lighting. There would be no, detail of any kind. There would be no color options. So you would definitely be lacking any detail to paint anything, to add any depth or whatever, and it would be kind of frustrating in that regard. Exporting for other purposes, maybe a VTT or a game engine might work, but we would have to retool all our objects around that because most of them need more depth and detail. Yeah, it's just not there yet, first off, on the back end, and secondly, we just didn't design Dungeon Alchemist with that in mind. When the devs set out to create this, they wanted to make a map system that offered maps that were easy for printing, paper prints, 2D prints, or exporting for like a video or a digital file for virtual tabletops, JPEG, MP4, paired with, the map data for virtual tabletops. Since then, there has been the immersion of 3D virtual tabletops. 3D printing has become much more mainstream. I mean, it's been around for decades, but it's become more commonplace in the last 2-3 years, especially because it's hitting that $200 price point. I bought a 3D printer 8 years ago. It was $1,000. That same 3D printer now is like $300. It is definitely much more affordable for everyone, and it's becoming more commonplace. And unfortunately, we just didn't develop our foundation of Dungeon Alchemist to support it. It wasn't a core feature we promised in our Kickstarter, and it would cause a severe amount of feature creep to chase after during our roadmap and development of our Kickstarter. So essentially, without breaking any promises to our Kickstarter, supporters, which we wouldn't be here without them, and without adding too much feature creep to our existing roadmap, which would, overwhelm our team both financially and just hours with a team of 10 people. It's just not viable. At this point, it really doesn't seem like it's going to happen. If it does, it would be way after we have delivered on all our Kickstarter promises and left early access. At that point, I could see us taking on something like that, but essentially it's a big ask because we would have to gut DA and redesign it from the ground up to do so. So I I don't know. Part of the reason DA is so lightweight as an install, it's like 6.7 gigs, and it runs, the assets, the maps are really small when you export them, is because all of our assets are really simple assets that just have the smoke and mirrors to them. The reason DA takes quite a bit to run is because you're computing all of these assets in real time, the lighting effects, all of those things in a real-time 3D render engine, as opposed to like a game like Baldur's Gate, where everything is a pre-rendered environment that you're exploring to save on processing power. So essentially, it's a weird custom application we've made, right? Where it's a real-time rendering 3D map environment, and I'll be honest with you, Dungeon Master, I totally am with you. I would love to see 3D models from this that I could try and print and maybe remove the supports from, maybe do like dissolvable 3D printable supports and do it. It would be amazing to make a tower like that with DA and then 3D print it. But at the end of the day, it would just look like a very simple shape with really not much going on for it. None of the detail you see in this video. Exactly. Exactly, Stormy. And that's a bummer. It's something they just didn't consider when they were creating Dungeon Alchemist, so it was never really on their radar or something they wanted when they created it. And as a result of which, it would take far too much effort and manpower to fix at this point. So and this is the thing I've run into as a person who does 3D printing. I've gone out and purchased 3D models on the internet, and those models actually aren't adequate for 3D printing. They're more adequate to be in a 3D environment than 3D printing because their colliders aren't solid. Like, there's gaps in the meshes, and the mesh itself isn't a complete mesh. And as a result of which, when you print it, it's got like huge gap holes in it, or it won't understand what it is, and it looks like some kind of thing from, another dimension. So unless you have the ability to edit it or change it, yeah, that's a problem. And we would have to go through and edit every single asset, over 6,000 of them, to accommodate for export for 3D model. But Dungeon Master, you could see why it's like, oh man, I got to explain this again. It's a very in-depth explanation that covers a lot of reasons why, And I'll be honest with you, I wish we could. I wish we could do it. It'll likely, if it ever is addressed, will be long after we leave early access. Bit more ivy. Actually, let's do the tall ivy. Like the tall. Kind of like. Make sure there's nothing creeping through. We're good. It is crazy. DA is sometimes the hardest thing for most computers to run. And you could have like an amazing gaming rig that can run the latest games with all the mods and everything, and it runs great. But then you get in DA and you're barely getting 30 to 60 FPS. And people are like, why? Why is that? Well, first off, there's a few reasons. In early access, the application isn't optimized. Second, it's like running... It's like, if any of you have used like Blender or a 3D modeling program like Fusion, when you're done making a 3D model, you can render it in an environment with like all the lighting and let's say you made a metallic object. You can render it thousands and thousands of times to make it more detailed. And when you're doing that, it can take days, literally days, to render a single object to make it look beautiful, right? And in Dungeon Alchemist, it's running all of these objects that you're placing in real time, rendering the lighting, the shadow, all of that. So yes, it does take a lot of burden on your PC. The better graphics card you have, the more RAM you have, the more powerful GPU, CPU, all across the board. It will help running the average map as you scale it and make it larger, add more objects. So it's a direct proportion of your computer's strength. But there's a reason it's kind of a problematic thing. Right now, Dungeon Alchemist is only using one of your CPU cores. So you could have over a dozen cores, and it's only using one of them. It's limited to a single core at the moment. while we're in early access. Secondly, every time, every update we release, we optimize DA and make it perform better. Objects, the AI, the just general performance and stuff like that. And so it has at times run a little bit more sluggish, and at other times run much better, right? That's just part of early access, and it will get better and better with time. And as we leave early access, it'll get more and more refined, because we'll kind of have a more finalized product and know where we're going with it. The last thing is, hot fixes and stuff like that, improve performance. Like our last update included a hot fix for the Steam Workshop, because many of the assets you downloaded from the Steam Workshop were causing DA to run slowly. It was like it had to render each asset individually before DA would run. And we figured out why that was and fine-tuned it. So not only that, but creators were having trouble uploading assets to the workshop, for instance, and it slowed down the more assets you had uploaded, and it became a nightmare for those creators to share and upload new assets. We did some research there, figured that out too. So with time, performance will get better, optimization will get better. I think it's just a combination factor of we're kind of getting DA to the point where we'll know more what it'll be like as a finalized product and how we can optimize it. Another thing too is updating Unity. We literally just migrated from a 4-year-old version of Unity to a much more recent version that's only like 2 years old. And in doing so, we're seeing some performance increases too. DA can definitely be a resource hog. I'm sorry for that. Well, thank you, MFU. I appreciate that. Honestly, yeah, I've been with the team like 2 years. Just after we launched early access on Steam is when I joined. And in the time I've been with the team, it's grown so much just from that. A lot of's changed. Anyway, I think part of the reason, the models are the way they are is the devs wanted a solution that would allow you to move them around really smoothly, and they look great from most angles, but at the same time, they're not that big. The model is only like a few kilobytes, right? Or like less than a megabyte per model. The average model on the workshop, they're like 5 megabytes to 30 megabytes. And they increase your map size exponentially. Once you start putting non-stock models in your map, it'll increase the size of the map a ton. Just be wary when you start doing that. Thinking maybe another statue, but I don't necessarily want it in front of the window, so I'm just going to probably do planter stuff, like these little plants. Huge collider jumps times. Mix in some wildflower edges into the hedges, and then I'm going to put in some fancier ones too, probably. Kind of mix in a couple ones. Shrink these down and in there. Happy flowers. Exactly. It is a real-time 3D render map maker. So it's a map maker that allows you to place all the environments, look at it all from all the various angles, and it renders all the lighting in 3D in real time, which it is a big burden on most machines. And I think the devs have kind of optimized DA around the average user in our community, trying to make it as optimal and useful as possible. Which, at the end of the day, there's still some improvement there. Always will be improvement needed. And I hope we get to that, Goldilocks zone for everyone. The one thing I think helps tremendously is RAM. I only have DDR4 in my computer, but I saw that I could support up to 128 gigs, and I got a bunch of just generic like um, Corsair RAM when it was on sale, like the highest speed I could put in my computer, and it has helped tremendously in like rendering, exports of videos, uploads, download, like running maps that are big, just accessing the various 3D models, because all those things take time and use your RAM to function. Yeah, we actually have a hot fix in the work right now to fix a couple of bugs that people are experiencing in DA. When you're typing in the search bar, there's some people that it'll delete their search as they're typing, so we're working on a fix for that. There's always little things being worked on. Or a piece or an edge. But yeah, our next update is titled Fun with Objects. And then after that, in no certain order, you have Tricks and Traps, right? Which will be primarily around effects and activations of tricks and traps. I'm hoping we'll even offer an option to do like tile exports. If not in this next update, PNG exports, i.e. transparent background exports, would make a lot of sense for tricks and traps, because then you can export a single object and use that as a tile or an integratable object in your map makers, or I mean in your VTTs like Foundry or Tabletop Simulator, etc. I hope, at least. Right now we have a green screen background, which is great, but it would be amazing if we had just a transparent backdrop for exports. It would save people a tremendous amount of headache. I think the other thing too is everyone expects everything to run at like 120 FPS because they can play, Baldur's Gate at that, so they're upset that their computer doesn't run DA at that. And I get it. It does hurt a little bit to realize that your machine that is like really powerful for gaming probably isn't that great when it comes to 3D rendering. You know what I mean? Um, or even computer aided drafting, it might struggle. And that's really nothing personal. It's just DA definitely needs some optimization, and I think that realizing it's more of a utility than a game is the main thing. It plays like a game, but it functions like a tool. I need to put something in here, a statue. Honestly, like, I'm happy with 60 FPS for the most part on any game or any application. I'm old school in that regard, and I'm still happy with 1080p. Like most things, I'm fine with it. Like all my rips for movies, like I rip my backups of my Blu-rays because I back up my collection, because I've noticed discs as they get older, they get disc rot and they start wearing out. It's not even scratches. Like the disc just starts rotting on the inside and they'll get little bubbles and it stops playing. A bunch of my old DVDs and Blu-rays and HD DVDs did that. So I've started backing up my movies as soon as I get them, to have a backup, and also so I can stream them over my home server instead of pulling out the disc. Saves so much time. Anyway, so I honestly, when I rip stuff, I rip it at 1080. I don't care for the higher end stuff because it just takes up too much space, and most of the time streaming it over wireless, it has trouble. It has trouble playing. But 1080's been fine for like decades. When I was growing up, we didn't have like high def anything or 60 FPS anything. It was all really bad. Like, I mean, I remember still seeing, like, I know my family had, like, I didn't grow up with black and white broadcasts, you know, but we had black and white TVs still around the house. Like, my first TV was a little black and white TV that was like an old one they had in the garage they gave me. So I'd play my NES games on that. And it was like a little TV like this big. I mean, the max resolution of anything back in the day was probably like 480 lines. And yeah, you know, back in the day we had to record video up hills both ways, you know, kids. It was awful. Honestly, though, it was interesting. I see old broadcasts of like old football and news and stuff. It looks so awful comparison by today. And the thing is I remember working at Best Buy when the introduction of 1080p came out. Like 720 was a big deal, but then 1080p TVs came out. And then people would buy the TV and then come back mad because they're like, well, my TV, my home TV broadcasts look awful. Well, what are you watching? Well, I'm watching movies on, you know, whatever. So you're playing with a DVD player and you're watching non-HD broadcasts on your TV and you're mad that it doesn't look good. They're like, wait, because there really wasn't any HD programming at the time. Like, basically only sports and a handful of movie channels had HD programming. Now, like, everything's HD. Even, like, free antenna broadcasts are HD. They mandated that when I worked at Best Buy, that antenna broadcasting had to be digital and HD. So, like, oh my gosh. And, like, I'll read on forums, people will be like, man, I really wish this DVD collection that the first 2 seasons were available in Blu-ray. Why aren't they available? Because Blu-ray wasn't around back then. They didn't even film it in HD. It didn't exist. There are some older video that was filmed in like the highest quality camcorders at the time. The reel can be, you know, you can take it from the original film reel that they have at the back lot stored somewhere and then turn that into high definition because the original film reel is still much higher quality. But, you know, TV broadcasts and everything we had on VHS was even DVDs, 480p or lower. And so, like, I don't really mind even watching DVDs still. It doesn't bother me. Like, I think nowadays we're a little spoiled on our HD content. Yeah, Ghost Town, I always try to pick a theme around, like, holidays when I can, or updates to try and be thematic to that. You know what I mean? So in this instance, Ghost Town could work with the ghost Halloween holiday coming up. You know, I know some people celebrate Halloween, some people don't. We're not trying to, like, whatever, get into that. It's more or less just to give you themed maps if you're doing them with your players this time of year. I know a lot of DMs will do, like, you know, scary themed one-shots or stuff for their players. I actually lock DA in at 60 FPS, and my monitors are both 60 FPS, so it doesn't bother me that much. You can actually, in the Steam, here, I'll show you. So, any Steam game, if you right-click on it and go to Properties, you can go to Launch Options, and depending on the launcher it's from, like Unity has different launch options. So what I have done is I've set it to launch always on a specific monitor because I have 3 displays hooked up on my main computer, and it would launch on the one where the search bar for Windows is, not where I want it, right? So monitor 3 is the monitor directly in front of me, and then I set my FPS max. Here, I'll just copy these into chat if anyone wants to use them. This way it'll never try to go over 60, and it never tries to drop below 60. But it'll kind of lock it into 60. You could also do this to 30 if you wanted. Maybe your computer doesn't run DA well. Do yourself a favor, lock the FPS down at 30, you know, so it's not trying to go up all the time. These little things here are, and if you want to just do the FPS one, oops, you could just do just the plus portion, just that in your launch options. That should hopefully lock your FPS, and you could set that to 30 or 60, whatever you want. And I know that's all personal preference, but honestly, trying to run DA at 120 on a 4K monitor, your computer is going to be screaming You're going to be heating up your home. You could cook eggs on the top of that thing. Oh, I understood what you meant, Caillou. Let's put some statues in here. This one looks nice. But I put those inside. I need a nice looking statue over here. No, there's statues in the collections. Let's see if we can get them to load again. Yeah, yay! Okay, statues. Let's get us some public domain statues here. A few of these are looking a little dicey. Yeah, those are even more dicey. Okay. Let's go public domain 2. Public domain statues are likely, a lot of museums and collections will do 3D scans of their galleries and upload them so people can look at them online and interact with them or even 3D print them. I know that the, what is the big, like the US funded, like museum gallery, I don't even know what it's called, but they have 3D prints or models available of many of their objects. I actually downloaded a megalodon tooth once and 3D printed it, and like a little, it was like a scan of a little amber carved bear that was found in like a cave. Anyway, you can download like these objects from history and 3D print them and look at them. So if you may never get to like a if you never can get to that library or that historical site or museum, then you can at least check. Oh, I already downloaded those. Oops. Let's try. Okay, that looks legit. Down. I want it roughly the same size as the other. Oh, they're on pedestals. That's why. Got pedal stool. Okay. Smithsonian, that's what it is. That's the thing. Thank you. But yeah, the Smithsonian has like tons of really cool 3D models, and a lot of museums around the world are doing this now. Airplane museums, military museums, like all sorts of stuff. You can see their 3D collection and print them or use them in this way. And I'm assuming that's where these statues came from. That's what I was just explaining there, Caillou. It's a repository of 3D models shared by the Smithsonian, and many of them are like actual historical items, so some are like more modern things, but yeah, it's a good way to add like some neat 3D models to your builds that are essentially, not necessarily like they allow you to use them for this purpose as long as you're not reselling them. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's like a pack of 3D art, essentially. Here. Like here's an ancient Chinese like city. Some of their this is cool. Oh man, this is really cool. So this is a scan of this like brass or bronze 3D elephant, or elephant statue, and you could download this 3D model, right? Has usage conditions, terms and conditions. Give attribution to the Smithsonian. So if you share this somewhere, definitely if you put it on the workshop, make sure you attribute them, link it back. Don't say it's yours. Properly credit them. That's it. That's great terms of use. That's essentially like Creative Commons. But that'd be a nice little addition for a jungle map or something. They change what's available, though, from time to time, so... Here's a mammoth. Alrighty, back to the build. Put some more flowers and stuff back here. Wonder if we have a little fountain that I can put there. Like a little font. Could put one here. Still have to decorate this whole side. Ugh. Blech. Splurk. Oscar, I have been building maps since I was like 6 years old. Like, basically in school, our teacher asked us to build, or like 7 years old, we were studying about the pyramids, and the teacher asked us to draw what we thought the inside of the layout of a pyramid was. And I made like a legend for little things, and it was like a game you could explore the pyramids and pick up items. And like I essentially made D&D before I knew what it was on like a little pen and paper game. And I had a ton of fun with that. I enjoyed it. And over the years, anytime there was a game that had map making, any game I found that had map making, I would try and do it. I would definitely take the time to play with it. It was fun for me, and I spend more time map making in some cases than playing the real game. There is a Fallout game that came out. No, not Fallout. Far Cry. Far Cry had a map builder for multiplayer in it, and I built like 200 maps in that thing. Spent hundreds of hours making maps. Never finished the campaign. Hardly ever played multiplayer. Built tons of maps. The other map maker I loved was the Forge in Halo 3, I believe. I spent tons of times turning maps into like racetracks and doing all sorts of neat stuff with it that like people would never even consider. Absolute blast. And yeah, I mean, I've just always had like a knack for it and a bit of a desire to make maps. And as such, I've just kind of always fed that desire. That being said, I don't do many like normal maps like topo or drawing them by hand. I usually prefer digital tools. Prior to DA, when I got into map making for campaign stuff, it was mostly things like Incarnate. I tried a few different ones, but I think I really was enjoying Incarnate just because it had so much going for it. But I also hated that it was a monthly model, like a monthly plan or an annual plan. And then it didn't run very well on my computer at the time, and I don't know if it was just my machine or my internet or a combination of factors. Being an online tool, that was something I kind of had to deal with. But overall, I enjoyed it. I loved it. I like what they did. I think they have a great tool, a great product. And I made some good maps out of it. And then a friend of mine told me about Dungeon Alchemist. And he was like, man, you need to check out this tool. It's really good. I think you'd make some really good maps with it. And he sent it to me, and I was immediately obsessed. And I mean, one of my first maps, let me show you one of my oldest maps, actually. So this right here is probably one of the first maps. It was like the third or fourth map I made with Dungeon Alchemist. My first map was like a pub. Just to play around with it, I made like a little, little pub. And then I made like a forest, I think, with like a crossroad. And then I made this. So it's probably like my third or fourth map. And this here, I was told that they didn't have the ability to make mines or cut caves or tunnels. And I was just like, that's not true. I'm going to try and do it. And I made this completely, without the ability to do so, I guess. There's enough objects I felt that could fill in to make a reasonable cave or a crag. Yeah, most people's first maps is usually just like a little pub or like a tavern. But this map here, it took forever to make because at the time there wasn't a lot of tools that quickly shape the terrain. Like the terrain tools are much faster now and more responsive than they used to be. I also put in all these rocks by hand to make it feel more natural and less repeating. And I had to do that when we didn't have the ability to raise objects up and down like we can now, or disable collisions like we can now. And lastly, this track was made entirely by hand with hammers. I lost a bit of my sanity that day. Every hammer, one at a time. Now, this is really difficult to do because if you have collisions on, they have a very limited space that they can move and rotate before they get mad at you. So you just kind of wiggle it in there and get it in just the right spot at a little angle at a time. And that's how I laid out this very long rail track. This map, though, is like one of my proudest accomplishments in Dungeon Alchemist because it really got me on the devs saw my work and were impressed with it. We started a communication. I started chatting with Wim after I made this map, and a lot of my insight that I learned from like experimenting with this map went towards how we made the, everything is lava biome. And then I took this map and I remastered it when we had the Everything is Lava biome, or the Everything is Lava update. It is this one here. So I, made it with improved tools, improved carving, improved, everything much quicker. The first one probably took me 30-40 hours to make. The second one was maybe 10-20. But I've also increased my skill and ability since then too. This one's tons of fun. Atlam, did chat freeze for you on Steam? Because it was saying unable to load chat for me. I had to refresh it. So this is essentially the same layout of map. It's the same size map. I just kind of redid it. This is the intro area, and then we actually have tracks here. So much easier to put together. Oh, good. So it's essentially just a new and improved map with more stuff in it, adding different concepts and things to it. We got the lava pits instead of like the weird dugout pits. I extended the track to go up and to the side through these areas. I figured they'd have the tracks going as deep into the mine as they could. But yeah, this map is 60 by 60. It's a bit of a beast to load, but it's a fun map, and it's Dungeon Alchemist is perfect for these types of things, especially if you have time to experiment with the rocks and play around with placing them and getting all the stuff to look real and feel right. Like, I went over all the ground and I placed little stones, little pebbles. I do that because it breaks up the monotony of the existing pattern. Little piles of rubble and mushrooms and dirt. It really does help add a lot of detail and minutia to a map to make it feel more alive. The 1.0 version has one thing that goes for it that's better, is the rock walls can get much higher in the older maps. You can't do that anymore in DA. We used to have a lot more verticality that you could raise the terrain, and they changed it when they introduced this update. Thank you, Atlam, for doing that. Yeah, we need to wrap up. I feel like I got no building done today because I was spending most of the time answering questions. So I'm going to spend about 10 more minutes doing some fine-tuning and building, and then we'll wrap up the stream. If you have any other questions, concerns, suggestions, feedback before we end today's stream, now is your last chance to do so. I'll be answering questions while I do the wrap up of this map. Well, work of the map today. I think what I'm going to do is have this go off the entire way to the wall over here. Do it like a weird turned fence. Flat. Really good. Yep. I understand their artistic decision as to why, but I don't have to like it. You know what I mean, Dag? How you doing, buddy? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Isn't that one? I don't think we've used. No, we just. Okay. You know what, Dag? I won't get mad at you. Your wife might though. So tread lightly, my friend. How you doing today, Dag? What you been up to? Hold on one second. Dog was just barking at something. I thought I heard him yelp and I was worried. My baby boy getting hurt. Little Roodle. Could be worse, Dag. Could be worse. Not a bad day, it sounds like. Did you pressure wash them? When I have dirty screens, I pull them out, set them up against the side of the house, and pressure wash. Oh, pressure washing is heckin' fun. One of my favorite activities. Oh my god, it is jumping like crazy. I'm just gonna move it up like a little smidge so it won't anymore. Once you adjust its z-axis, it will no longer like be inflicted by or like affected by um other colliders in the area, which at times they can get very zealous. Okay, so on your window, right? In I don't know if other countries do this, but in the States, on your window, you have a glass window that either opens vertically or horizontally, right? And behind that window is a screen mesh in a frame, and that screen can be removed. The whole frame of the screen can be taken out. That screen can get dirty, can get dusty, it can get clogged. Um, so you would then pull the screen out and you could set it on the ground or up against your home and then hit it with a hose with a nozzle or a pressure washer. You could scrub it. You can even replace the screen part if it breaks or gets cut or torn or worn out. They sell like packs of it at the store that's rolled up, and then you can put in a new screen piece, cut it around the fitting, and there's like a little rubber grommet that you push in that holds it in place. So you would pressure wash these. It's like a very fine mesh, like a plastic mesh that you can see through, but it prevents like bugs and dust and stuff from outside from getting in, or gunk, leaves. So you can leave your screen door open but close your or screen open, but like usually when you open your window there's always a screen. It doesn't just go right outside, so you would have to move the screen before you get out of a window, for instance. But it's not that hard. It's like really easy to take a screen out. Takes like 2 seconds. I hope that was an explanation, but search window screens. Oh, that eye looking really good. What do you think? I want it to feel like it's hitting those corners. Got no creeping. It's not like a computer screen or a TV screen. It's not like that at all. Completely different. Sorry for the confusion there. Very cool. This is looking beautiful. Really coming along. All right. I think this is a good time to end it. Oh, did not want to do that. Wrap up the stream for today, and we'll get back to the garden next week. We have 2 paths heading out of the garden behind the chapel. I might put like a little tiny plot of graves here that's like, you know, missionaries and preachers and stuff like that. The people who serve the church kind of thing. That would be their graves. And then the rest will just be like plants and decorations and stuff. Got a couple more paths here with some tree or some benches under here. It's going to be nice when all's said and done. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for hanging out. Remember, if you enjoyed the stream today, could you do me a huge favor and hit that like, follow, subscribe, whatever button it is for your platform of preference. That way you can find us when we stream in the future. And if you wouldn't mind sharing the stream, letting other people know about it, whether, word of mouth or you just retweet, like, share, whatever, the stream. That way in the future, more people are bound to locate us and check us out. As a small indie company, word of mouth is literally what keeps us afloat. So we do appreciate when you spread the word about how much you enjoy Dungeon Alchemist or the streams. Again, my name is Mac. I'm the community manager for Dungeon Alchemist. Dungeon Alchemist is a map-making utility available on Steam. There is a free demo. You can try it out right now if you're interested and want to check it out. Go to Steam, search Dungeon Alchemist, or we could get some links dropped in chat. That would be amazing. That way you could try DA before you buy and get an idea if it's something you want to do or how well it'll run on your machine. Otherwise, we host several streams a week. Today is Mapmaker Monday, where we build a map live for you to watch and follow along and learn. Our next stream is actually on our Discord server. It's called Office Hours. We host it every Wednesday. Office Hours is essentially kind of a chill hangout where we show teasers and stuff from the upcoming update, provide live support to anyone who needs it, answer questions, AMA format, and essentially just kind of hang out and get to know each other as a community. There really isn't enough spaces for people to hang out and just vibe anymore, so it's a great place to bounce ideas off of each other as DMs, discuss campaign or story ideas, or even stat blocks. We get kind of a little distracted on that stream. Sometimes we'll talk about Stargate, sometimes we talk about video games, we talk about whatever is on people's minds and just kind of hang out as a cartographer community and get to know each other. So if you're interested in participating, that stream is at 10 a.m. on Wednesday. That's 10 a.m. Pacific till noon p.m. Pacific. Depending on your time zone, that could be drastically different. For instance, Eastern, that is 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. Or if you're across the pond, that could be 8 or 9 hours ahead. So that would be like 6 or 7 p.m. depending on where you're at. So if you're interested in checking it out, make sure that you follow that link back to our Discord. You can click interested. That'll RSVP you to the event, and you'll get a little notification when it goes live. That way you don't forget. It's really easy to forget those things, and getting a reminder on your phone through Discord when the streams are live is a very valuable tool, especially if you want to follow along and learn and hang out with our community. The next stream after that will be the Dam stream, which is every other Saturday. On the alternating Saturday is the Dam Challenge. The Dam stream, we showcase community maps and assets from the Steam Workshop. The Dam Challenge is a showcase of maps and maps that were made as part of an ongoing map making contest. You may have seen the little marquee at the bottom of the screen here next to me. It says the next Dam Challenge is Ghost Town. What that means is if you want to participate in that challenge for a chance to win a $10 Hero Forge gift card, you make a map of any shape or size using Ghost Town as inspiration. Then you submit that map to the Dam Challenge channel in our Discord. Pinned at the top of the channel are some rules. You must follow those rules in order for your entry to be qualified. If your entry is qualified and you're the winning entry, you get the $10 Hero Forge gift card. Your map is the first map featured on our stream and is also featured in our weekly newsletter, which gives you a lot of face time, a lot of eyes on your work, a lot of downloads. Always a great way to get recognized for your hard work in our community. Anyway, if you're interested in participating in that, you have between now and the 18th end of day in your time zone, between now and 11:59 p.m. to make a map using Ghost Town as inspiration and submit it to the Dam Challenge channel in Discord. Thank you so much, everyone, for participating. I had a lot of fun hanging out with you. We didn't get a lot of building done today, unfortunately, and that is my bad. I was answering a lot of questions, but I'd rather be helping our community than building anyway, so that's a success to me. And we did get quite a bit done despite that. Quite a bit of the garden added, finished more pathing. The gate around this entire church is now done, like the fence. So we now have a dedicated property space, and we can start building around that. I'm going to be putting some roads on this soon, probably finishing out the roads so we can blend those two together, and kind of have an idea of where everything in between it will be. So I'm thinking next stream we'll probably define the roads, like this main artery of road that'll go around this like roundabout, and then kind of start making the rest of the land plots designated towards, like, oh, this will be kind of pauper graves, this will be fancier, this will be this. Most likely, though, we'll finish off this area next stream or work on it, continue it. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Again, my name is Mac. I'm the community manager for Dungeon Alchemist. Dungeon Alchemist is a map-making utility that is primarily for the fantasy aesthetic of tabletop games. It's available on Steam as a demo or in early access. Otherwise, we'll see you, but until next time, we'll see you next time. Sorry, got tongue-tied there. Otherwise, we'll see you next time. I give a damn. Mac out, okay? Bye. See you later. Bye. Kismet Gamer, thank you for the like on Facebook. Much appreciated. Bye, everyone.